The parietal lobe contains two areas that allow us to perceive our environment and act upon that environment, the motor cortex and the sensory cortex. Motor cortex, as it sounds like, has something to do with movement. It allows you to move. The sensory cortex, on the other hand, pulls in information about your environment. You've got all kinds of pieces of information coming into you at all times. You're sitting down on your chair, and so you're getting your chair is telling you about the feelings in your gluteus maximus and whatnot. It's telling you whether your back is tired. You're perceiving all this information. You're listening to what I'm saying, or you're trying to not to hear what I'm saying. You've got information coming in through your hearing. You're smelling something. Maybe your breakfast from your breath. You're tasting something, maybe your breakfast from your mouth. You're seeing something, theoretically. You're probably not looking at your telephone. Nobody's looking at their telephones today. That's kind of exciting. Maybe you're looking at something. So you're gaining all this information all at one time. Well, all this is coming into the sensory cortex, and you're distributing that information. You're deciding what is the most important. Is it the fact that your butt's tired? I'm sorry, your gluteus maximus is tired. Maybe your back is sore. Maybe just a little bit. Is that the most important piece of information, sensory information you have coming in? Or is it the words that I'm saying? Or maybe it's what you're looking at. It's probably not what you're smelling or tasting. I mean, if you were eating, then what you were tasting would be important. But whatever the flavor is in your mouth right now, it's a mixture of spit and whatever you had for lunch. Me, it's going to be my lemonade.
Do you make your own lemonade?
You bet. Half a lemon, a package of Crystal Light, a can of seltzer water, 4 ounces. Mix it all together. It's real sour. It's kind of sour. Okay.
Bruce,
Yeah.
the salsa water is pretty good too.
That's okay. I was just kidding you about the apple. I'm not that obsessed about my apple. That was just a joke. And I wasn't teasing you, I was teasing me. So I've got 2 more apples for lunch. So I'm okay. No, I was just kidding. I told you could have whatever's in the refrigerator. Yeah, the seltzer water is pretty good. Lemon seltzer water. But it doesn't matter. You can use, you can't really taste that much of a lemon anyway. The body's able to maintain itself by making minute adjustments to chemicals in the body through the endocrine system, your hypothalamus, your pineal gland, pituitary gland, thyroid, parathyroid, adrenal gland, pancreas, reproductive organs, your ovaries if you're a female, and your testes if you're a male. Most people don't have both, but some people do. It's very, very rare. The reality is it's very, very rare. I told you the story of Bear, the guy that had both male and female reproductive organs. Bear, the interesting thing about Bear was that his testes, because of the estrogen that was being put off by the ovaries, the testes were pumping tons and tons of testosterone into his system. That's why he had such long hair. That's also why he was so aggressive. He was a very aggressive individual. He lost his temper really, really easily, or he would have. He was sexually aggressive, and that's one of the reasons why we had to take the female nurses away from him, because he was not really sexually assaulting them. He was flirting with them, and sometimes he was actually grabbing them. So we had to only use male nurses with him. We couldn't let female laboratory technicians draw his blood, because he would make comments about them when they leaned over to draw his blood. He would talk about their chests and whatnot. So we couldn't let the females go up and draw his blood, which is kind of weird. And it had to do with the fact that he had both sex organs, and of course he he was pumping estrogen into his system to a minor extent. It wasn't that much. And that's one of the reasons why when we took out his ovaries, we didn't tell him because, and his testosterone did decrease after that, if I understand what was going on correctly. There were other things about him that I didn't tell you about. The endocrine system regulates the body's chemical needs by releasing messengers called hormones. When hormones are secreted, they are carried throughout the body in the circulatory system. Hormones, like neurotransmitters, can either be excitatory or inhibitory. And I apologize for the naked people. Well, they're not really. They've got all their organs on the outside. It's really weird. But, okay. The pituitary gland secretes hormones that affect other glands. However, the gland that controls the pituitary gland is the hypothalamus. We used to call the pituitary gland the master gland. We don't anymore because we know that the hypothalamus controls the pituitary. The hypothalamus secretes corticotropin releasing hormone that stimulates the pituitary to release adrenocorticotropic hormone that binds to the adrenal cortex, causing the release of cortisol. Cortisol is important. It's the hormone that makes you fight or flee. It tells you to get excited and so that you can get out of a select situation. That's cortisol. Now, if you're a type A personality, I was talking to somebody who was a type A personality last night. This guy's losing weight, damn it, and I keep telling him, that's not good. You're diabetic. You can't do that. You can't. Your body cannot change that much. This is not a good thing. You need to be very, very careful because you can kick yourself into a crisis just by losing weight. He's lost 15 pounds since he came back from the break. He's lost 15 pounds. This is not good. He can hurt himself. I know. He can put himself into crisis. The other problem is he lives alone. And I'm his neighbor. So if he dies, guess whose fault it is? Well, it's his fault, but I'll feel bad about it. I mean, he could. He's losing weight. He takes insulin. And he's only eating 1 meal a day. One of the things they tell people that are diabetic, they need to eat small meals. But they need to eat a number of small meals throughout the day. And that will keep their sugar level at a normal level. But this guy, he's not doing that. He's eating 1 meal a day. So his sugar level will tank. 12 hours after he ate his meal, his sugar level is going to tank. And he's going to if he's shooting himself up with that insulin as if he's eating 3 meals a day, we got a problem. We got to really see, and that's one of the reasons why he's losing so much weight. And he's a bio guy. Jeez, the man's pisses me off. He's going to kill himself. The adrenal glands look like lumps of fat that sit on the top of the dark, highly vascularized kidneys. If you've ever seen these things, if you've ever butchered a sheep, there you go. Sheep anatomy looks very similar to human anatomy. The kidneys are very dark. They're almost not black, but they're a very dark red. And the adrenal glands are right on top. They're white to yellow, depending on whether they're human or sheep. Actually, we used to use sheep insulin. That was the first insulin that we ever used, was sheep insulin. And we used it for humans. And that worked kind of pretty good, not too bad. But we did some people had reactions to them. So we started producing synthetic insulin. Anyway, that's what the way they look. This should be darker, of course. That's about the right color. It looks like a glob of fat. If you've ever seen fat, it's yellow. You gotta open up a chicken. You got all that chicken fat in there. It's all yellow. That's the way human fat actually looks like. It's really kind of interesting. We had a lady one time. She was dying from congestive heart failure. So they cut her open and they pulled all the fat off of her. Congestive heart failure has to do with the fact that you're squeezing your heart You've got too much fat and you're squeezing the heart. So they cut into her and they pulled out 100 pounds of fat. I know. And in the hospital, when you take something out, you've got to send it down to the lab. You can't just like throw it away, you know, just kind of throw it in the trash can. So they had to, so they're pulling all this fat off this lady and they're piling it up on a stretcher because they had to cart it down to the laboratory. So they brought it down in a stretcher. Oh my God, you can't imagine what the smell was. Fat does not smell good.
Ew.
It was, I know. They had to clear the hallway.
I think I have a neighbor that's like, she was plus size. Yeah, plus size.
That's
After
sweet.
a couple
Breathe over here.
of months later, she, I saw her around. She's a tripod size.
She lost that much weight?
How much? What?
That's not healthy.
I think she came back from a hospital or something. So.
It's not healthy. You shouldn't do that. This is a shock to your system. You shouldn't lose more than 1 or 2 pounds a month, a week. No, that's still too much. I mean, it's a shock to your system. Your body has to get used to it again. You can't lose that much weight. You shouldn't lose that much weight.
Or you'll
It's
just
not
gain it back.
good. I'm sorry?
Or you'll just gain it back.
Well, potentially, but I mean, it's a shock to your body. Your body doesn't know how to react. Your body's used to being big and having all that support. So all of a sudden, you lose all that weight, and it's a shock to your system, and that's not good. Anyway, I have no idea why I started talking about fat, but we're going to talk about fat later on. The adrenal glands are specialized to react to periods of high stress. The outer layer, or the cortex, produces gonadocorticoids like male androgens and female estrogen. This is your adrenal glands. Glucocorticoids like cortisol, mineral corticoids like aldosterone that help regulate your blood pressure. And that's what it's all about. Okay. So, if you're a type A personality, one of the problems that you have is you produce too much cortisol and you get too much of these steroids in your system. This is a problem because it can be destructive. And you're not going to live as long as other people. So type A personalities, they are very successful people, but they die young. Younger than they would have died if they had just taken it easy. Us type B personalities, we live forever. We're never going to be Donald Trumps or the president of the college, because we don't care. But the fact that we don't care is going to keep us alive for this thing. So we get to live forever. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I haven't figured that out yet. Maybe for some people it's good. Okay. Anyway, type A personality and type B personality. There is a type C personality. Type C personality refers to people that have problems with cancer. They have personalities that lead to cancer. These are warriors, and that is why it depletes their immune system. Because of that, they're more susceptible to cancers. That's a type C personality. The inner layer of the adrenal gland is known as the adrenal medulla, which produces hormones that serve to get the body ready to immediately for fight or flight. Epinephrine and norepinephrine are these two substances. Norepinephrine increases your heart rate, it increases your blood pressure, increases glucose, providing instant energy. That should be epinephrine. Epinephrine is all that stuff. Norepinephrine makes you feel good, makes you feel like you're on top of the world, like you can conquer the world, makes you feel like you can do anything. That's norepinephrine. Sometimes we will raise your norepinephrine level to make you, to do away with your depression, to dissipate your depression. But epinephrine, of course, makes you excited and ready to go, ready to fight or flee. Increases your heart rate, increases your blood pressure, increases your glucose, providing you instant energy. It does a lot of different things. It dilates your pupils. It also stops your kidneys from functioning. And this can be a problem. This can be a problem. If your kidneys stop functioning, of course, then you stop filtering your blood, and that's not a good thing. So if you're under a lot of stress, once upon a time I was teaching, I was student teaching. So I did that in the morning, and then in the afternoon I had a bio lab. Bio lab, yuck. Anyway, I had a bio lab in the afternoon, and then after my bio lab, we had a track meet. So this was on a Monday. So on Friday, my wife decides that she's going to leave me and take my daughter with her. And so we argued and argued and argued on Friday night and on Saturday. And on Sunday, I packed her up to take her home, to take her back home, her and my daughter. And then halfway there, she decides, oh, wait a minute, I still love you. I'll come back with you. I know, wives, I swear. Anyway, so I brought her back. Isn't that sweet? It's a love story. But she, of course, she tells me, the last thing she tells me before we go to sleep is, don't think that this changes anything. I may still love you, but I may leave you tomorrow, you know, that kind of thing. Like the dread pirate Roberts. I may kill you tomorrow, but sleep well, but I may kill you tomorrow. It was the same deal. So I got up the next morning, of course, and they had student teaching on Monday morning, I had student taught. And then I had the bio lab in the afternoon, and I just barely made it to the track meet. I was sprinting across campus to get to my track meet was at my school, luckily. So I got into my uniform. I started running. I think the first race was a 440 relay race. So I had to run 110 yards, which is nothing. I mean, 110 yards is, you take 15 steps and you breathe twice. You know, that's it. But afterwards, I vomited. I was sick. So then my next race was a 220. And I didn't win. I almost always won, and I didn't win. I came in third. And I vomited afterwards. All right, this is the sad part. So then my next race was the 440. So I ran the 440, and I vomited afterwards. And then I didn't stop. I just kept puking. I just kept vomiting. It's not, you can't, I'm dehydrated, you know, you can't do that. And I just kept vomiting. I couldn't stop. I came in like second. My buddy beat me, and my buddy never beats me. Never. But I came in second in the 440. So then it came time for the mile relay, and I'm still puking. And I couldn't run. And the coach came over. The coach had emphysema. Smoked cigarette. Bradway, I don't think you should run that. I don't think you can run this race. You know, one of those things. Why don't you go in? Why don't you go in and we'll call the doctor and see if there's something wrong. So they called the doctor, and the doctor said, we need to hospitalize this guy. And they took me to the hospital, and they drew my blood, and they found out that my kidneys were broken. My kidneys have stopped functioning. Don't cry, it'll be over. I lived. I was in the hospital. My kidneys didn't kick up. It didn't start working for 2 days. But they hadn't worked since Friday because I was under all that stress. Because my wife was giving me such a hard time. And when she found out that she potentially caused all this trouble, she thought it was funny. Same wife that when she stabbed me, she thought it was funny. I know. Anyway, so don't marry the wrong person. I guess that's a hint and a warning to those of you who aren't married. Those of you who are married, I'm sure you haven't, if they haven't stabbed you yet or laughed because you almost died, then you're probably okay. When I had my heart attack, my current wife thought, she was afraid that I was going to die. She actually cried instead of laughed. I thought that was a good sign. Okay, So your kidneys stop functioning. The other thing that happens too is you stop digesting food. So if you eat food while you're in a stressful situation like that, a lot of times that food won't digest. It won't leave your stomach. And you'll start burping the whatever it is that you ate. And if you can taste what you ate yesterday or 12 hours ago, you're not digesting your food. You must be under stress. And you need to be very, very careful, because not only are you not digesting food, but your kidneys aren't working either. So you need to relax and allow yourself, allow that food to digest. The thyroid gland is shaped like a butterfly with two wings on opposite sides of the windpipe, as you can see. The thyroid produces thyroxine, which regulates the body's growth and metabolism. And of course, one of the beauties of the thyroid gland and thyroxine is that you keep about 200 days worth of this stuff. So even if you lose your thyroid gland, well, not if you lose it. If your thyroid gland stops functioning, you're still going to be okay for about 200 days, because you've got that much stored in your body. So you'll be okay for 200 days anyway. And by that time, hopefully you figured out what to do about your thyroid that's not functioning. If you are hyperthyroid, one of the things that will happen to you is that you will not be able to gain weight. It's like you're on speed or something. If you're hypothyroid, which means your thyroid is not working enough, then you'll gain a lot of weight, and you won't have any energy. So this is one of the things. You'll also be depressed, and so what we do as medical people, when somebody is depressed, one of the things is we draw your blood to find out if you have thyroid problems. Hopefully your doctor does that anyway. That way they won't treat you for your depression. They will treat you for your thyroid problem rather than depression. We don't want to treat you for the wrong thing. I don't want to treat you for the wrong thing, but some doctors, they like to do things the fast way. At the back of the thyroid glands are 4 parathyroid glands. Parathyroid glands regulate calcium in the body to help maintain the nervous and muscular system. You not only need calcium in order to have strong bones, but it also has to do with all of your neurons have calcium in them, and that is one of the ways that they are able to operate. So you need calcium in your system. My wife has decided to forego red meat. Okay. She's not eating red meat anymore. So what she's doing is she's not taking in as much protein. This is a problem. So she has to get her protein from some other source. So she's eating beans instead. But you have to eat the right beans, and you have to eat them in the right amounts. And that's what she's trying to regulate. Last night I called her and she said that she was going to have tomato soup for supper. I know, she's not feeding herself. This is a problem with being married. Write this down. This is a problem with being married. Sometimes your wife doesn't make any sense. Overactive parathyroid glands can maintain too much calcium in the blood, leading to kidney stones, parathyroid problem, kidney stones. An underactive parathyroid gland can cause osteoporosis in later life and problems focusing and depression in youth. So if somebody is depressed, a lot of times it has to do with their parathyroid gland, as strange as that may seem. Does this sound like ADHD? Your parathyroid gland is malfunctioning, so you have problem focusing and you're depressed when you're a kid. Yeah. There's tons of things that look like ADHD. Now the problem is that a lot of doctors treat the symptoms rather than try to figure out what the source is. So we have a lot of kids that are being treated for ADHD who are not ADHD. They have the symptoms of ADHD, but it may be their parathyroid gland. It may be the environment that they live in. is causing them. Yes, ma'am.
Does the medication they give for ADHD, does it produce the same symptoms if it's someone who doesn't have ADHD?
It's an excellent point. You are correct. Yeah. So if you don't have ADHD, if you have this problem, and they give you Adderall or Ritalin, yeah, it's going to make them. They really will be ADHD. As exciting as that is. The pancreas regulates sugar in the bloodstream by producing insulin to convert sugar from the diet into energy. The pancreas also produces glucagon to increase the amount of sugar in the bloodstream. And that's how the pancreas works on your blood sugar, which is the most important, is very important to you. I was talking to a guy a couple days ago, and he was telling me, you know, I went into the doctor, my glucose was 400. That's 4 times normal. That's not good. And it said, well, you're diabetic. Did they try to regulate it? No, they just gave me more medication. No. You can't do that. You can't just give them more medication. You've got to figure out why he had a 400 glucose. That's what you have to do. You have to put him in a controlled environment, like the hospital, and then draw his blood. And regulate his medication. I mean, if he is taking his medication faithfully, which theoretically he was, he shouldn't have had a 400 glucose. They need to figure out what the problem is. Just a thought. So if they ever do this to you and you got a really skewed result, don't let them just play you off. Don't let them do that to you, because they'll kill you. And they'll blame you for your own death. They won't blame themselves for not doing anything. So you can't let them do that to you. So if you've got a problem, especially with glucose, glucose isn't something to play with. 400 is, if I had a 400, I'm normal, I'm not diabetic. If I had a 400 glucose, I'd be dead. One of the reasons that diabetics have such high glucoses is because their body has acclimated to that high of glucose. So you can't just bring them down to 100. You got to slowly bring them down so that their body doesn't go into shock. We used to treat depression with insulin. We used to give people insulin shots, and then they'd go into a diabetic coma. And when they came out of the diabetic coma, when we brought them out of the diabetic coma, they wouldn't be depressed anymore. I know. This is how we used to treat people. As stupid as that sounds, don't let them do this kind of stuff to you. Your circulatory system, of course, the main part of your circulatory system is your heart. That's what your heart looks like. It's about the size of your fist. Heart quick facts, it's about the size of a clenched fist, weighs about 11 ounces. It pumps 5 quarts of blood a minute through the circulatory system. If you're normal, let's see how I am. See what my heart rate is. Well, it's 120. I'm excited. I know. It beats 2.5 million times in a lifetime. The heart is the major transportation system, delivering nutrients to and pulling waste products out of your body. Of course, this is really important. When I had my heart attack, it was one of these top arteries that was where my blockage was. I've got pictures of my blockage, but I can't, well, anyway, I've got them at home. What happened with my heart attack, it wasn't that I had a blood clot, it wasn't that I had a accumulation of fat in my artery. What happened was that because I exercised so much, I was a runner, I was a weightlifter, because I do that, my artery had expanded. And when it expanded, it curled. And then when I was under stress, that loop that I had created closed off, and that's what happened. So I don't want you to think that I had a blockage of any kind. The last time they went into my heart, and they keep doing this, they keep doing heart caths on me, where they stick a garden hose through your femoral artery and it goes down into your heart. The last time they did that, they looked around and what they found was nothing. They didn't find any necrotic tissue, they didn't find any blockage, they didn't find any problems whatsoever. He said my heart was stronger than it probably was before I had my heart attack. So I'm okay. Don't worry about me. I walk up and down the stairs every day. How many of you guys walk up and down the stairs? There we go. Kiana and I are the only two. We're the only good people in the room. Okay. But we walk up and down the stairs. And we can do it. And we're healthy, aren't we?
Okay.
We're better than we would be if we didn't walk up and down the stairs. Okay. Blood is living tissue. Contains 3 types of cells. Your blood contains red blood cells, of course. These are also known as erythrocytes. Erythrocytes just means red cell. Actually, it's Latin for red cell. So erythrocytes transports oxygen and other nutrients and the waste products, especially carbon dioxide, away from your tissue. It's shaped like a donut. Looks just like a donut. Well, your hemoglobin is in the middle. It's right there in that crease. And that's where you transport oxygen in this crease. It's also where you transport carbon dioxide. That's what your kidneys and your lungs are for, and your liver. Anyway, okay, so we've got all these red cells carrying our oxygen, and this is a good thing. If these cells don't look like this, if it doesn't have enough hemoglobin, then it doesn't transport oxygen very efficiently. If they are too large, then they won't transport oxygen at all. If you've ever come in contact with carbon monoxide, then the cell that has transported carbon monoxide will not transport oxygen, which is O2. It won't transport it anymore. That cell becomes non-functional. Okay, and this is the reason that carbon monoxide kills you, because it destroys your red blood cells. It keeps them from carrying oxygen. Now the problem with smoking is that when you smoke a cigarette, and not if you smoke a pipe or a cigar, but if you smoke a cigarette, you're getting carbon monoxide. You're taking carbon monoxide down into your lungs. If you're a chain smoker, then you will have enough carbon monoxide in your system that it is detectable. One of the things that we did when I was in the lab is we tested people for carbon monoxide poisoning. If somebody came in, they went to sleep with the heater in their room. The heater in the room produced carbon monoxide. They would come in, and of course they were short of breath and they could barely breathe. And we would draw their blood to find out if they had carbon monoxide in their system. So where in the world do you get a control for somebody with carbon monoxide? Well, what they would do, since I didn't smoke, they used me as a negative control. And I had a friend who was a chain smoker, and we used him for the positive control. His carbon monoxide was always elevated because he smoked cigarettes. And now he's killing himself. Now the funny, no, it's not that funny, I guess, but if we had a race, of course, since I had all that positive transportation of oxygen, I had no problem beating this guy all over the place. He couldn't run, he had to walk. And sometimes he breathed hard when he walked. It's because he had so much carbon monoxide in his system. Okay, so hemoglobin is a form of iron, and this is one of the reasons why we check your iron level, to make sure that you've got enough hemoglobin in your system. If you are anemic, then you will not have enough hemoglobin, and that's the reason. And your transportation of oxygen is relatively poor. There we go. The second type of cell in the blood are white cells, or leukocytes, which means leukocyte means white cells. Leukocytes are part of the immune system and patrol throughout the body looking for problems. Neutrophils, this is a neutrophil right here. There it is. Neutrophils seek out bacteria. The lymphocytes, these are the lymphocytes right here. They seek out viruses. The eosinophils seek out allergens and parasites. You don't have very many of these guys in your system unless you have really strong allergies. If you're one of those people that is allergic to like everything, then you'll have a ton of these guys in your blood. Sometimes you can have an autoimmune reaction that they call asthmatic eosinophilia, which means you have too many eosinophils. Your body is producing too many eosinophils, and so it's actually attacking your own cells in your lungs, causing asthma. There's an advertisement on television about asthmatic eosinophilia, but that's what they look like. Eosin actually is really kind of an interesting name. Eosin is actually the stain that they use to make it orange. Isn't that a cool name? And they're pretty. They are so pretty. You see one of these guys, if you're looking at a blood smear, and it's all orange. You know, all the rest of the cells are pink. Red cells are pink, and white cells, well, you can see what white cells look like. They're kind of ugly. But the eosinophils are orange, and that's kind of cool. Basophils seek out toxins like heavy metals. This is a basophil right here. And then monocytes seek out cancers. Monocytes are microphages. This is what a monocyte looks like. Actually, well, that doesn't really look like a monocyte to me. Anyway, monocytes seek out cancers. It's not as pretty. One of my jobs, I was a hematologist, and one of my jobs was doing differentials, where you identify all the white cells that you have in your system. If you came down with an appendicitis, then we would draw your blood, and we would do one of these. We would do a differential to find out what type of white cell you had in your system. If you came down with mononucleosis, we would look at your blood smear to determine what you had in your system. Mononucleosis is a viral infection, so you'd have an excess number of lymphocytes. Appendicitis is a bacterial infection, and you'd have an excess number of neutrophils. So we can actually tell what your disease is by the number of neutrophils or lymphocytes in your system. If you had picked up a worm someplace, if you picked up a parasite someplace, you would have an excess number of eosinophils. When I was down in South America, I ate some chicken that wasn't quite cooked right. I know. I picked up Cyclospora, which is a parasite. It's an amoeba, and I picked it up down in Guatemala. Anyway, I had an excess number of eosinophils. It was nasty. It almost killed everybody on my trip. It was a Fulbright trip, and it almost killed all the people on the Fulbright trip. And almost everybody were native. They were almost all natives. So it would have killed off all those Indians. Don't cry. It'll be all right. Nobody died, all right? The third type of cell in the blood are platelets or thrombocytes. Platelets are cytoplasmic remnants that circulate in the blood to form clots when there is a break in the circulatory system from a wound. One of the things that happens to you, one of the reasons you have a spleen is because your spleen regulates the number of platelets you have in your system. Okay, so it's not a good thing to lose your spleen, because now all of a sudden you don't have a regulatory organ in your body regulating the number of platelets that you have. This is not good. However, I'm spleenless. You know I'm spleenless. I'm not brainless, I'm spleenless. So I don't have an organ that takes all these old platelets out of my system. So if we look at your blood, as long as you have a spleen, then the number of platelets you have is about 250,000 per mil, and that's about right. That's normal. Up to 750,000 is normal, and you have probably around 250,000. I have 1.7 million per mil. 7 times normal. But most of my platelets are non-functional. They're old. I don't have a spleen to clean them out. So most of these things are non-functional. It's not like I'm going to all of a sudden clot up because I have too many platelets. But they were afraid that was going to happen when they first took my spleen out. I didn't die. They kept telling me I was going to die. I hate doctors when they tell you, well, you're probably going to die. You should have died on the operating table. Thank you. We expected you to die. Oh, okay. Sorry I disappointed you. Damn doctors. They're always trying to kill you off. Me off, I guess. When the heart beats, it is moving blood throughout the system by opening and closing chambers of the heart. Unoxygenated blood moves into the right atrium through the superior and inferior vena cava. The right atrium contracts, pumping blood into the right ventricle. The ventricles are the ones that actually do the pumping. The atrium just means entryway. And so the atrium are much smaller than the ventricles are. They're far less muscular. If we look at the heart in this lady's hand, we can see that this portion is actually a little bit redder than the top part. The top part is just collects the blood. This part, the bottom part, actually pumps the blood. So this is a very, very powerful muscle. It can move blood all the way through our system. Now, what happens if that muscle gets weak? If it doesn't pump efficiently anymore? Well, this is a really serious problem. This is what congestive heart failure is all about. If you get a leaky valve in your heart, or if the muscle weakens, then you can't circulate blood as readily as you could before. But it's not the blood that's the problem. The problem is it can't move moisture out of your lungs. Congestive heart failure actually is accumulation of fluid in your lungs. Your heart's job is to take that moisture out of your lungs. And if the heart is not functioning properly, then it won't take the moisture out of your lungs. So when people's heart becomes weak, they usually die of accumulation of water in their lungs. And it's known as congestive heart failure. Or if it beats inefficiently because of the person has accumulated too much body fat, they will die of congestive heart failure. They can't get rid of the water in their lungs. My dad had a valve problem in his heart. Went all the way through World War II, almost got killed during the Battle of the Bulge. And this guy comes home and he has valve problems in his heart. He was about 65 years old, started dying of congestive heart failure because they needed to go in there and repair the valve in his heart. So this was on Friday. This was before Labor Day. So he's dying. My dad's dying. You can hear it. You can hear the water accumulating in his lungs. I know. So when he coughs, it sounds like, he's blowing bubbles underwater. It's that bad. I mean, it's really, really bad. Well, my mom's a nurse. She knows everything that's going on. She's watched people die of congestive heart failure. She knows her husband's dying. He's starting to turn purple because the circulation is so poor. And she got mad. Oh, I told you this story. She got mad at the doctor because the doctor wouldn't do the surgery before Labor Day. He wanted to take the weekend off, take a 4-day weekend. This is on a Friday. And so I came over to visit. My mom called me and said, well, you better come over and visit your dad. I don't know if he's going to be around much longer. So I went over to visit, and my dad's dying. He's sitting there dying. And of course, everybody's standing around. We're all watching the old man die. And so I told my mom, all you have to do is call the doctor. All you have to do is call the hospital, and they'll perform emergency surgery. If you don't, he's going to die. And she said, I don't care if he dies. It's going to be their fault if he does. Well, okay, but he's still dead, isn't he? Oh my God. So I talked to her. I actually made the telephone call. Everybody else was just sitting around watching the old man die. I'm a hero. I saved my dad's life. Everybody else. And nobody was arguing with my mom. She was going to let the old man die. Isn't that stupid? families, I swear. Anyway, that's my dad. He's still alive. Or no, he's dead now, but he died of something else. But he lived to be 90. He was like 65 at this time. Where was I? Where was I? I think I was in Nebraska. Yeah, I was in Nebraska. I came all the way over from Nebraska in order to save my dad's life. Everybody else just watching the old man's out. Okay, so what's happening here? The right ventricle pumps oh no, we're not there yet. Yeah. So the right atrium collects the blood. There is a valve right here. That valve will open up and it will pump the blood down into the right ventricle. The blood at this point is unoxygenated, so we need to collect some oxygen. So where are we going to get that? The right ventricle pumps the unoxygenated blood to the lungs through the pulmonary artery, where it picks up oxygen and returns to the left atrium through the pulmonary veins. This is really kind of bizarre because veins usually carry unoxygenated blood, but in this case the pulmonary vein collects oxygenated blood. So we have just oxygenated the blood in the lungs, and we pump it back down into an artery, a holding chamber in the heart, and that is the left atrium. The left atrium drops the blood into the left ventricle, and the left ventricle pumps the oxygenated blood throughout the body through the aorta, and that's why the aorta is so important. You may have heard stories about people that had their aorta nicked. We had a Navy SEAL. This was up at Fort Peck. This guy got stabbed in the heart by this guy had a ring, one of those ring knives. It's like a 2-inch knife. The guy hit him in the chest twice. Didn't make much of a hole. Didn't even hurt, but it nicked his heart. So he's okay as long as we don't open up the chest. As soon as the air pressure changes in his body, that tiny little nick in his aorta will explode. And that's exactly what happened. They got him on the operating table. This was like 2 hours later. They decided they were going to fix it. They weren't exactly sure what was going on in there, but they knew he was leaking blood. So they opened his chest up, and as soon as they changed the pressure on his heart, that his aorta exploded. That little tiny hole just ripped, and he bled to death. He died. We see this all the time. They're okay as long as you don't open up the chest, but you don't have a choice. He's leaking blood, so you're going to have to go in there and try to fix it. But they're not exactly sure what it is. As soon as they open him up, because the pressure has changed, it causes the aorta to rip, and at that point they bleed out and they're gone. Anyway, that's why the aorta is so important. It's a really big vein. It's the largest artery in your body. Systolic blood pressure is the larger number when reporting your blood pressure. This pressure value represents the blood leaving the left ventricle and is forcing blood throughout the body. So the pressure that is caused by the beginning of the pumping of your blood, that is the big number. The small number is the pressure represented when the system relaxes. So if you have high blood pressure, it means that your heart is creating too much pressure in your circulatory system. That's what it means. Usually this is caused, well, it can be genetic, and you may have genetic high blood pressure, but it could be caused by stress. It could be caused by whatever conditions you're in. I have high blood pressure. I have to take 2 medications to lower my blood pressure. Let's see what my heart rate is now. 109. I'm getting better. I won't die. This is the diastolic blood pressure is the smaller number when reporting your blood pressure. It has to do with your body relaxing. If that number is high, it means that there's too much pressure in there. If the first number is really high, it's above 180 is high, but anything over 200 is way, way too high. It means you have high blood pressure. Now the problem is if you have perpetual high blood pressure, it will expand your blood vessels. And if it expands your blood vessels, you're more likely to have problems like blood clots, hemorrhages, if you have high blood pressure. So you're more likely to have a stroke, you're more likely to have a heart attack. So that's why they don't like high blood pressure. The major part of the respiratory system is the two massive lungs sitting behind your rib cage. Other parts of the respiratory system include your pharynx, your trachea, your diaphragm, your bronchus, your alveoli, and your bronchioles. Your lungs, very important to have functioning lungs. People that run expand their lungs, and that's a good thing. Their lungs should be as big as they possibly can be. People that live up in the mountains, living here at 7,500 feet, your lungs are bigger than the people down in Chinle. People in Chinle are only at 6,000 feet. The amount of energy that it takes to breathe for you expands your lungs, and that's a good thing. So you're probably healthier than somebody in Chinle. That and the fact that Chinle has to be the ugliest place I've ever seen. Everything is the same damn color, isn't it? I mean, the road is brown. It looks like the road has mud all over it. I mean, it's just not a very pretty place. And the dirt is this ugly shit brown color, isn't it? Isn't it? Or am I crazy? Or am I crazy? Maybe I am crazy. All right. That's why I love to go to Bosch's.
The way you say it. Bosches.
Isn't that's the way it's spelled? Isn't that the, what, you say bashes?
Yeah. Bosches.
Bashes. It's a Latin pronunciation. Bashes.
Bashes.
Air enters the body through the nose or the mouth. The skin also breathes, but it is a minuscule amount, not very much. If you stop breathing, actually, you can stay alive just from the oxygen you get through your skin. But I wouldn't do that for very long. You can't live for very long. It's just a minuscule amount. But people who have blocked airways, a lot of times they'll stay alive for a short period of time because of the breathing of their skin. Air passes through the pharynx, back of the throat, and into the lungs through the trachea. The trachea is where food goes into the digestive tract through the esophagus. Air then passes into ever smaller structures, the bronchi, the bronchioles, and then finally the alveoli. In the alveoli, oxygen and carbon dioxide is exchanged with the blood through capillaries. And this is very, very necessary. People who smoke will block their alveoli with tars, with whatever junk they have coming in. If you live in an area with a lot of contamination, the air is not clean, then those tiny little particles of whatever that substance is will get into your lungs. I come from Indiana. Indiana has fungus in our forests, our woods. So I have that fungus in my lungs. I have spots on my lungs from that fungus. If you live in the San Joaquin Valley of California, they have another type of fungus that grows in the San Joaquin. It's in the soil. And it's Neospora is what it is. Neospora is the stuff in Indiana. It comes from pigeon manure. Really? We have that many pigeons? No, they killed off all the... There used to be passenger pigeons. Passenger pigeons would darken the skies. There were so many of them. And they bred in the oak forests of Indiana, and they lived in the oak forests of Mississippi, Alabama, and Tennessee. And so they would migrate, going back and forth between Indiana and through all those oak forests. But the last one was killed in 1913, and I don't know why they killed them all off, but they did. They killed them all off. But those forests, those oak forests, still have pigeon manure in the ground. So if you go into the woods of Indiana or in Tennessee or Mississippi or Alabama or Georgia, then potentially you will pick up this fungus. But when I was a kid, I cut a lot of wood from the fireplace. And because of that, I have spots on my lungs from the neosporin. Anyway, but you can do the same thing just by smoking cigarettes. Actually, it's worse if you smoke cigarettes. This is a fungus. It's never going to grow. And I'm never around that fungus anymore. But people that live in Indiana and live in the forests, they tend to die a little bit younger because of this fungus. The alveoli, in the alveoli, oxygen from the air passes into the bloodstream, and carbon dioxide, of course, is released from the bloodstream into the ambient air. The process is reversed and the carbon dioxide is expelled from the body through the mouth and the nose. So you're actually expelling carbon dioxide. So when you're trying to give somebody the breath of life, you're doing mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, you're actually blowing carbon dioxide, oxygen too. But you're also giving them an excess amount of carbon dioxide in their lungs, which is kind of interesting. Anyway, so we're expelling carbon dioxide and taking up oxygen. What am I doing? It is the buildup of carbon dioxide in the blood that triggers the diaphragm to contract, pulling air into the lungs. The body is also able to clean dust and other foreign material in the air through sneezing when the toxins are too overpowering and coughing when the throat is irritated. So this is a good thing. Remember, we were talking last time about the fact that my nose was running after I had walked all the way from the FOB to the NHC building. This is a good thing because it was my mucous membranes were stimulated by the cold, and my mucous membranes needed to react to that. Well, how in the world were they going to keep my mucous membranes warm? Well, by expelling fluid. They were reacting to the cold, and that's what you need to do. You're not sick just because your nose is running. You're not sick at all. This is a good thing. If you have earwax, this is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. If you have boogers in your nose, this is a good thing, not a bad thing. It's normal. It's natural. It's supposed to happen. This is how your body reacts to alien situations. So it's a good thing. You're not sick.
So
If you sneeze, you're not sick. You're just...
So it's almost like when you're starting a vehicle where the liquid comes out from the lung.
Exactly.
It's releasing out the...
Exactly. You are absolutely correct. This is not a bad thing. This is a good thing. I have too much water coming out of my tailpipe. No, you don't. You just started your car up, and this is how your the liquid in your exhaust system needs to get out of there, and this is a good thing. It's normal, it's natural, and it's how things are supposed to be. This is good. Farting. Someone was talking to Wilson. He was talking about smells. Oh, Wilson drives me nuts. Anyway, this is just you getting rid of all the excess methane you've got in your digestive system. Your body produces methane, and it's a good thing. It creates this when it digests food. If you don't digest your food properly, then now you got a problem. If you're not producing methane, now you got a problem. If you've got a digestive problem and you're producing, instead of methane, you're producing hydrogen, now we got a problem. Because that hydrogen can indicate that you have stomach problems that will cause ulcers. I know. So potentially we could check your farts to find out if you have too much hydrogen in the gas that you expel. This is a good thing. This is natural. This is the way that our bodies process food. If you urinate, that's a good thing. If it's clear, the clearer it is, the better it is. That means you've been drinking a lot of water. This is a good thing. So you should always look at this stuff.
My son was he kept, a couple nights ago, he kept urinating, and I was just like observing him, like a 1 hour period, and he would kind of urinate about 5 times in an hour. And I was kind of getting worried about it.
Diabetes could be diabetes.
And I was like thinking maybe he's clearing out stuff, just clearing out his body or something. It was only that one time that happened. So I don't know if it was like too much water,
Could have been.
too much stress at school.
Probably not that. If he was under stress,
Yeah.
his kidneys wouldn't function.
Okay.
Remember, they stop during
Yeah.
stress. But there's another thing that can cause you to urinate a lot. If the air pressure changes. So when this snowstorm moved in, you probably had to get up and pee. And that's the way it's supposed to be. If you fly in an airplane, and of course the air pressure is controlled in an airplane, but it'll force you to accumulate fluids. Your ankles will swell up. This is what happens when you're in an airplane. So when you get out of the airplane, what do you do? What happens with all that fluid that you've accumulated?
Going down through your hip.
You got to get rid of it somehow. So the
Okay.
next night, you better pee. You need to pee over and over and over again. And this is a good thing because your body is regulating itself. This is a good thing. When this storm moved in, you probably had to urinate a lot more than you did if it was sunny outside. Why? Well, it's the air pressure has changed. This is a good thing. So we need to understand these things. Oh my God, I've urinated 3 times this hour. There must be something wrong with me. No, we got a snowstorm moving in. The air pressure has changed, and that's a good thing. Your kidneys are functioning properly.
It's a good thing with the, I think with like some of the, what they do, like when you drink a lot of water out in the sun, it kind of accumulates too, and how we
If you drink a lot of water, and it's sunny outside, and it's hot and sunny outside, and you don't urinate, are you in trouble? No. No, your body, you're losing the water in another way. I mean, I've worked all day and not urinated at all day. And Sharon, that's a good thing. Sharon, that's a good thing. Okay. I'm losing fluid, right? Because it's so damn hot outside, and I'm working. So I'm losing all that fluid. Why would I urinate? This is one of the things they teach in the military, is to try to save your water if you're out in the desert. So, you try not to urinate so that it stays in your system. And you can recirculate that fluid. And then you won't become dehydrated. Good thing, okay. The body is also able to clean, okay, we've already talked about that. So if you're one of those people that sneezes sometimes, or you cough a lot, it may be because you live in a dusty environment, or you may be allergic to the dust in your environment. That's a possibility as well. But the reason you cough, the reason you sneeze, is to get rid of all that crap. The dirtier your environment, the more likely that you need to sneeze. I used to bale hay, and damn it, they always put me up in the hay mow. So I was the one stacking hay up in the mow. And of course, it's a closed environment. There's not a whole lot of circulation. As the hay bales would come off the elevator, it would drop hay dust all over the place. And so if you saw a beam of light coming from the window, you saw all this dust circulating in the air. And afterwards, of course, you'd blow your nose and you'd have a handful of not only mucus, which is a good thing, but also all that hay dust. And it would be brown and black and green. And that's a good thing, because it's gone. It's no longer in there. You probably didn't cough, you probably just blew your nose and sneezed. Your nose would run, and that's a good thing, because it's trying to keep that dust from getting down into your lungs. If it gets into your lungs, you got a problem. But you need to keep it in your mucous membranes. So all that dust was accumulating. The entire air pressure, air passage, the trachea, the nose, and the mouth are covered with tiny hairs called cilia that traps foreign material like dust or germs and expels it from the body by coughing or swallowing the detritus coated in the mucus. So you can swallow it if you like, it doesn't really make any difference, or you can spit it out. I had a friend that hated, he would not swallow his own mucus, so he spit a lot. It was kind of nasty. But at the same time, he was spitting out bad stuff, and that was okay. That was a good thing. We worked in the lab, and there were a lot of strange chemicals around, and it irritated your mucous membranes. So you sneezed a lot. Well, you sneezed sometimes, or you coughed because of the chemicals. And this was a good thing, because we needed to get that stuff out of our system. But he hated to swallow his own mucus, so he'd spit. Yuck. It's like somebody that dips snuff. Yuck. All that brown spit, isn't that attractive? Asthma is, why do they always spit into water bottles? Why not into something dark so that you can't see what it looks like? Isn't that nasty? It just seems nasty. One of my great joys of being around you guys is because you don't dip snuff nearly as much. Everybody dips snuff up north. It's nasty. And of course, they've all got, evidently it's sexy to have a bottle of brown spit in front of you. I haven't figured it out. They all do it though. It's really nasty. Asthma is a chronic allergic reaction to allergens in the environment. 90% of the childhood cases of asthma are triggered by animal dander, pollens, dust, indoor mold, damp conditions in buildings. One of the great joys of people in the north, remember the polar vortex was around for 2 weeks. Everybody's just going gaga over the fact that they had below zero temperatures. The below zero temperatures are killing off the mold. Normally, if it doesn't get that cold, the mold stays there. It hides in the corners, and then it just expands. And then you have children that react to that mold, and now there's a problem. But they're really happy about the fact that they had 2 weeks of below zero temperatures. And now that mold has frozen, and it's gone. It's no longer there. It's dead. So it'll be like 5 more years before the mold's able to come back. So they're really happy about that. One of the positive things about the polar vortex, it killed off all the mold. However, there are other problems. The polar vortex tends to kill off delicate birds. One of the birds that it has killed off is Bobwhite Quail. You don't know what that is? Quail? Yeah, they're quail. Yeah. And they sing Bobwhite. Yeah, they got the little top knot on their top of their heads. It killed them. It killed them all. So there are no more quail in Indiana, no more quail in Ohio. In the old days, of course, there were birds all over the place, and you could hunt quail, and you could hunt pheasants, and you could hunt all kinds of
It
things.
tastes like chicken.
I'm sorry?
It tastes like chicken.
What, quail? Yeah, okay. Tastes like fowl, I guess. Okay. Anyway, that's one of the positive things about the polar vortex. Non-allergic asthma can be triggered by cold air, by viral infections, secondhand smoke, and household chemicals. So if you have that type of asthma, if you come in contact with any of these things, a lot of times you'll have an asthma attack. An asthma attack occurs when the body overreacts to allergens, to an allergen by producing mast cells that constrict the airway. The airway becomes inflamed and produces mucus to combat the inflammation. Now normally mucus is a good thing, but in this case it's reacting to nothing. It's not reacting to something. So asthma is kind of like an autoimmune disease. It's reacting despite the fact there's nothing to react to. Well, there is, but it's overreacting. Symptoms of asthma include coughing, wheezing, whistling sound from the lungs, shortness of breath, swallow, and shallow breathing, because you can't take a deep breath, so you hyperventilate, unfortunately. People die of asthma. You have to be very, very, very careful if people have asthma. You need to open those airways. It's one of the reasons why they need to carry their puffer with them all the time, whatever their problem is. There's 2 major types of puffers. One of them is epinephrine, and the epinephrine will open their airways. I'm trying to think what the other type of It's another vasodilator. What is it? Albuterol. Albuterol.
The one with steroids?
Albuterol. That's the other type. Thank you. Asthma is the most common chronic childhood illness. 17% of boys have it. 11% of girls have it. 18% of children who grow up in poor families have it. Really? Why? Why would more poor kids have it than rich kids?
No.
Mold, exactly. They live in poor conditions. Exactly. Only 13% of richer children have it. 21% of the Hispanic and African American children have it. 11% of the non-Hispanic white children have it. So as you can see, it's 10% more prevalent in the African American and Hispanic communities. What about the indigenous peoples of the Americas? What about the American Indians? You guys have asthma? Do you see it a lot
And children?
in children? It's very common?
Kind
Kind of. Would you say it's at this level or at this level? 1 out of every 10 children or 2 out of every 10 children? 1 out of every 5 children? What do you think?
of. I say 18.
This
A
one?
little bit less.
Okay. 1 out of every 10? You guys have been in grade school. How many kids carried puffers around?
It's the bottom one.
This one?
Yeah.
About 1 out of every 10? Okay. Since you graduated last year. Okay. How about ear infections? More or less common?
It's pretty common.
Fairly common?
Yeah.
Otitis media? There's a reason for that.
Why?
Structure of your ear canal. It's shorter. So you're more susceptible to ear infections.
Cover your ears.
Doesn't work. Nice try though. There are 5,000 deaths per year due to asthma, though most are older adults who suffer an asthma attack. One theory as to why asthma is on the rise is because children are spending more time inside where they are exposed to household allergens such as dust mites, animal dander, and cockroaches. This is what dust mites look like. I know, aren't they cute? You want to pet them, and maybe
You
not.
want to bring them home?
Yeah, they are.
Put it underneath your couch.
They're so cute. Okay.
So nice.
The digestive system is also known as the gastrointestinal system. Because of the necessity to keep all the cells of the body fed, the digestive system is the most complex system in the entire body. It represents a tube running from the mouth to the anus and runs from for as much as 30 feet. And this is what your guts are. It runs from your mouth all the way down to your butt, and it just kind of winds itself around yourself. One of the reasons, if you've ever been around chimpanzees, they look like pregnant women. They've got big guts. They carry their weight right there in their stomach. And the reason is because they have a lot more intestines than we do. They can digest foods that we can't digest. That's why they have so much intestines. They have big abdomens, chimpanzees. When we evolved to be smarter than chimpanzees, we lost some of our intestines. We lost some of the foods that we could eat. They don't eat the same foods that we do. They eat a lot of vegetable material. We don't. We need to take in red meat. We need to take in a lot of sugars. And so our digestive system is more efficient than theirs is. So ours is smaller than theirs is. As confusing as that is. But then again, we are smart. So we can eat the sugars, we can eat the fats that the chimpanzees don't eat. But they can eat bark off a tree, and we can't. We can't digest cellulose, and they can. Food starts off in the mouth where it is emulsified through chewing and a mixture of saliva from the salivary glands to begin digestion. One enzyme in the saliva is amylase, which begins breaking down starches through decomposition. I know, we've got amylase. Do they have amylase, the chimpanzees? No, they don't. So they can't break down starches like we can. Starch is a very complex sugar, like potatoes are a starch. Corn is a starch. Rice is a starch. We can process these foods, and we can process them very efficiently.